All right, and welcome to another episode of Business Acceleration Playbook, where we are bringing you the plays that you need to win in your business. I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Tim Kroll, Dash Playwell. You might
Well,
want to
I love
explain
putting
those
that in
two.
there because it's about everything that I do as far as what the Lego and Lego means play well. So we're going to help you guys play well together, right?
Absolutely. And today specifically, we're going to be talking about not playing well, but we can wrap that in there somehow. But we're going to be talking about how to increase revenue and cut costs. And well, we'll just say it. These are some. I've heard the phrase "trying times" so much I didn't want to say that, but I couldn't think of another term. But the cost is through the roof on everything. That's no secret, right? I mean, I know when we went to Virginia, we filled up our truck, our diesel truck, $6.99 a gallon. $6.99 a gallon,
Yeah.
insanity. So I mean, it's kind of one of those things that on a personal level we're all feeling it. On a business level, they're feeling it sometimes even more so, just because they've got the increased costs. But people are feeling the cost personally, so they can't pay more. So it's like this
I've seen it
ongoing
across
cycle.
across every industry, across every
Yeah,
aspect of it. And, yesterday was July 4th. Today is July 5th, obviously. And unfortunately, the fireworks are not over. And what I mean by that is we still have a lot of things that are just blowing up in our faces. You like how I tied that in there? That
oh, I
was
did.
unplanned,
That
but
was
there we
good.
go.
That was
Put it
good.
all together. But that's the truth of it. Is like there's so many times in our lives where we're looking at it from a personal standpoint and from a business standpoint. There are things that are unexpected and they blow up. Now they can look really fabulous, like a firework does, but they can also cause a lot of damage if it's not controlled or if it's not put in the right direction. There's a lot of different ways that we can apply that. And I don't want to expand that application too far because then everybody be like, "Oh, that's a dad joke," and then we go down a whole different road.
I
But
like dad jokes.
yeah, well, I got lots of them, so we better hold that for another day. But I'm really, really grateful. This is actually our very first live that we've been able to put out there. We've done a lot of
You
recordings,
know
so if
what?
you
Yeah.
haven't gone back and checked out some of the recordings, you're going to want to do that. We've been doing the podcast. We will continue to do the podcast in and around your business acceleration playbook, where we are doing basically a play-by-play. And we felt like, especially with the times that we were in, the situations that we've watched happen across all these businesses, we needed to come live. We need to be able to talk about what is going to drive some revenue, especially when things are uncertain. What are some ways that we can cut cost? And frankly, the things that we're going to touch on and that we're going to talk about, it's just basically scratching the surface of what could be done. And a lot of times it just depends on the business. I'm going to say probably the word for the day is going to be adaptability and the ability to look at what is going on and how can you change the way that you're doing business. How can you change the way that you're looking at what is the perspective, a different perspective that you need to take a look at it. Because when we first started talking about this topic, Maria and I had gone back and we looked at, okay, over the last 3 years, companies have been in survival mode. Some of them have survived and come out of it. Some of them have failed desperately. Some of them have had to close down. Some of them had to rethink of how they were doing business. And we're not getting any better. If we're just going to be talking frankly, the inflation numbers are going through the roof. And then we've got people that are looking at it and saying, well, I can't pay anymore, but yet the businesses are looking at like I have to raise my prices because my costs are going up. So there's a lot of ways that we're going to be able to tackle this today. And I want you guys to stay tuned through the whole thing because we're going to basically drop our combined, 40, 50 years of experience here just to have a really frank discussion on how can we drive up our revenue.
Absolutely. Well, and I think when you think about revenue, we all know that I mean, the lifeblood of any business.
Yeah.
And, right now, people are needing more revenue because, again, like we talked about, their cost is going up. So they need more. But then, on the other end, people are like, oh, I don't want to spend this money because everything's getting more expensive. So what we're going to be going into is not necessarily we can't fix the inflation problems. I mean, we don't have that capability. Wish we did. Magic One, that would be great. But what we can do is give you some tried and true ways that we've done it, right? This isn't the first time that we've felt rises in costs, and sadly, it's not going to be the last. But I know I was reading an article preparing for this a little bit ago that Bankrate reported that more than half of experts polled for Bankrate's first quarter economic indicator poll said that inflation will likely be more significant than experienced in the next 12 to 18 months. So that means, like you said earlier, Tim, this isn't going away. And not only is it not going away, it's going to be peaking. It sadly hasn't peaked from what they're saying. So, and let's hope they're wrong. But I fear they're not. So either way, but some of these things that we're going to talk about today are good things to kind of think about within your business anyway. You know, that I know my grandma used to say this phrase all the time. We gotta tighten our bootstraps. And I was like, what is she talking about? You know, and I understand that, right? You know, it's a lot of our grandparents and parents, depending on kind of what age bracket you were in, they were great at these things. And a lot of us now aren't so much.
Well, we haven't had to be. Last time, and I was thinking back, and I actually had a conversation with a contractor, a friend of mine, and we were kind of talking about the state of economy, specifically in the real estate business, the land business, and the construction business. And I mentioned to him, I said, man, I have the feeling that we are right at a stage of pre-2009. And if you all recall, 2009 is a little bit ago. I mean, we're talking almost 20 years now plus. So 2009, there was a lot of the industry where one day we were working, and at that point in time, I owned a carpet installing business. I was doing a lot of service work at that point. And one day we had work, and it felt like the next day we had nothing. Like it just stopped cold. Like there was nothing there. And all of a sudden there was no business coming in. People weren't buying the carpeting. We weren't getting installs. I mean, I went from being booked out about a month to what are we going to do tomorrow kind of a situation. Yep. And then, so I've talked to, and I've actually followed up with a couple of other companies in and around the service, and it's amazing. All of this stuff kind of coming to a head. I talked to one individual who owns a service company, and part of his residential service company, and the things that I'm hearing from residential service people right now is that they're basically a day, possibly 2 days out. And then I'm talking with retail companies too, and they're like, well, we were planning on having this much. We were forecasting this much revenue coming in, and they're all lower than what they had planned on. However, so that's all the bad news. The good news is that I'm actually talking along with those that are adapting are finding different areas and different means where there is capital gains, there is financial revenue. So great example in the aspect, the one individual that I talked to, his residential business is collapsing and he doesn't have a whole ton of work. However, his commercial side of business is increasing, and they are booked out about 2 months on their commercial work just because of the amount of work that they're able to get. So there is definite opportunity inside of whether it's the rise of inflation or it's the drop of retail sales or whatever. There are opportunities, but the point is we have to be able to adapt and look where specifically are those opportunities. And there's a couple of things I think that we're going to go through here that we can actually maybe open up your perspective, open up your eyes, be able to say, oh, I never thought about it that way. Because quite frankly, we get in that, I'm just looking down, I'm looking at what I have right in front of me and I'm working. If we can figuratively and literally raise your eyes up to kind of look at a little bit broader horizon, you can survive this and you can increase.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. And I think, I was pulling up this other, I don't know, I'm a stats girl. So I was looking, it said that this is on Market Watch, right? On Market Watch, they're saying that 24 states that was looked into pretty deeply, they had price increases these are small businesses, that were in excess of 80% and higher. So price increases just in this year, just 2022, that have gone 80% and higher in all 24 states that they kind of looked into in depth. I was actually shocked by that. I knew everything had gone up, and I know me and you had this discussion even with my cafe that my prices have tripled since I opened not even a year ago. But that still was shocking that all 24 states that they looked into was more than 80% the cost had increased for small businesses. And if you've ever owned a small business, there's not a really large profit margin there a lot of times anyway, depending on where you're at. So this is crushing. This is completely crushing. So we started out this show with some really depressing news, but we're going to turn it more positive because there are some things we can do. There are some things we can do to increase revenue. And one of those things that I'm going to go ahead and bring up right now is look at, and I say this all the time, look at your low hanging fruit. Look at the things that are organically selling right now today. Not the things that you're thinking about putting out, not the things that, you're having to heavily, market or ask for the sale on. The things that are just organically selling, the things that people are coming to you and asking to buy. What are those things? Identify those, because for businesses, the things that are coming in naturally, that is usually a good place to start. And we'll go in more depth on that. I'm sure, Tim, you have something to say about that.
I think I actually, let's talk about some specific examples of that, because it's easy to talk in abstract. It's easy to say, look at your low hanging fruit. The challenge, and this is where I think we have to help them raise their eyes to see a little bit broader. So let's talk about a couple of specific industries. I'll start with the retail side of things, because I own a Lego shop. We have different pieces and parts. And what we're seeing, and I've shared this before, whether you are a brand, you're selling product over the counter, you actually have a physical shop, find things that are under that $10 mark. So, for example, one of the things that we do is we look at stickers. Stickers can be resold for anywhere between $5 to $10 to up towards $20, depending on the type of sticker that it is. Because you can have a decal type sticker that people put on the back of your truck or the back of a car. You can put it on the outside of your water bottle. These are all things. The honest cost of those are usually around $1 or less per sticker. So your numbers and your markup are pretty significant. In fact, when I talked, this was about 3 or 4 years ago, I talked with one of the local, it was a tourism type shop. They were open when a lot of the tourists would come up north. Their little, I would say it's less than a square foot of their shop. And they had a little sticker rack. That square foot was more profitable than the rest of the square footage in the entire house.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were able to make a couple $100s off of that 1 square foot by selling stickers as an upsell at the cash register, compared to the rest of the square footage that had their products, their t-shirts or hoodies or cups or mugs or whatever else it was. But they were able to make more just with that 1 square. So that's what we mean when we're saying about finding the low-hanging fruit, things that would naturally be sold or that are on the cheap level of somebody that wants to come in and help support a local. That's one. We can keep going with different industries here.
I like it. Well, I mean, I think that's a great example. And I mean, since you used something that, I'll use the cafe again. Obviously we started out primarily as a coffee shop. More people, if you look at our analytics, more people come in for coffee. They'll buy other things, but more people come in for coffee, and our profit margin is higher on coffee. So it makes more sense to kind of push a lot of our coffee drinks, right? I know when you have a retail location, this is something else I want to say too, because there are other industries that are all retail. People want to see different things when you come in. Another thing that we've been kind of putting into place is even just rotating our stock. And I'm sure you use this too. Rotate your current stock. Yes, you still have to have, where you're bringing in new things. But if you have a plan where you're moving things, it changes the view. You're able to get a little bit more life out of the same, inventory that you have. So that's another kind of tip as far as cutting cost and increasing revenue kind of all in one, because if you don't want to have to order inventory as often, especially like our retail shelving that we have for a coffee shop, we've got shirts, we've got notebooks, we've got pen, we got all kinds of things, right? They don't sell quite as fast as our coffee. But, instead of ordering new all the time, moving things around and giving it a different view, displaying it in a different way, those kind of things goes a long way in any retail. And it doesn't matter if it's something like Lego or something like a coffee shop or a boutique or a tire shop. It doesn't matter. Let's change how the displays are, because it gives it a fresh view and a fresh appeal, and people shop with their eyes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this actually talks specifically on both sides of the coin here. So the reducing the cost and driving revenue. And if I may, let's sum that up with creating the experience.
Yep.
Because what you're talking about is moving products from one spot to a different spot. But I would challenge and say, that you're doing much more than that. You're actually crafting an experience for people to come into and be involved with, and that gives them something that they want to come back to, which then increases the repeat buyer. So one of the
Customer
things
journey.
There you go. You're right. Exactly. One of the things that we do with ours is we want to have events and we create activities. We do things that make it special for somebody to have an experience. And that means so much more to the consumer. And having that experience, once it creates that loyalty between the consumer and the small business. So creating that experience is absolutely key. And it does both. It actually will drive revenue and it will reduce your cost. Reducing the cost by reusing a lot of the same stuff that you have, kind of remanufacture, representing, remarketing, whatever you want to call it. It just creates that experience, which really enhances your customer experience.
Absolutely. And I know that's something we do a lot here. We've even, another kind of tip is partner up with other people in your area. We've partnered up with a DIY local small business, and they've brought in like a DIY sign painting or, whatever the case may be. And it helps them because, hey, I can sit and paint and get a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, a bite to eat. It helps us because we're bringing customers that may not have come that day, that evening, into our location. So, I think a lot of times people, when they start to panic, especially, they start to think very siloed, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I got to fix this. I got to fix this. I got to fix this. But if you take a deep breath for a second and you kind of look out, a lot of the small businesses are in the same boat. They just need to be bringing dollars in. They need to reduce costs. So if you can do both at the same time, if you can kind of team up and have teamwork and say, hey, I'm thinking about having an event, would you like to team up? You do this, I do this, and those kind of things work really well. We have another lady that's going to be coming at the end of this month, and she's doing a pop-up boutique, like a pop-up. She's bringing in clothing. Women are going to come try it on. It's a women's clothing boutique. The women are going to come try it on. They get to try it on instead of, getting shipped to them and then having to mail it back that it doesn't fit or they don't like it. So we're creating an event like this. You have to be creative a lot of times when you're trying to reduce cost and trying to increase revenue, to not sound salesy or desperate, and to also not seem cheap, right? Because if you just take everything away and you're like, this is all you get, back to they're not getting that experience. But you can be creative and make it to where it's actually a better experience because you've put the extra time and effort and energy into it.
Yeah, what you're talking about is those events. We actually did a Lego and latte. And we partnered up with our local Starbucks just because we didn't have another local coffee shop. I'd rather do it with local, but in this situation, it was the manager of Starbucks said, hey, we want to partner with you guys. We want you guys to come in and do a Lego building event. I'm not even going to charge you guys for our space because I know the people coming in are going to buy. And it brings people in. Number one, it helps us as a Lego shop to obviously the marketing, the PR combined with Starbucks and the coffees and the lattes and all. So those are the kinds of things we can do. Beer and bricks, and we do a lot of those kinds of things where we're partnering up, and it's a great idea. So if you're in the industry in it, whether it's the industry, what are things that are not competition? Because obviously you don't want to have two coffee shops partnering up, but what are things that you can do to combine to be able to create that, going back to that experience? What can you do to create that experience?
No, I love that. I absolutely do. And, I think for me, when I'm thinking about things that increase revenue and things that decrease costs, I do like teaming them up because honestly, it's less work for me. I don't have to get two separate things. But if you can kind of kill the bird with one stone, that's a terrible analogy. I don't know who started that.
Two birds with one stone.
Yeah, but it's a terrible analogy anyway. I don't want to kill any birds. But anyway, point is on that is that
you're going to feed your family.
That's true. Okay, fine. If you're feeding your family, that's fine. If you're randomly killing birds, that's not. I guess I can get behind that. But point is that, if you're looking at how to do this, it could seem overwhelming. So reach out to your chambers, right? Reach out to your chamber, because I can guarantee you, I'm on the local chamber board here. I can guarantee you they're getting lots of questions like that. And, they probably have a lot of great suggestions or connections on where you can start to get some of these things kind of into play, especially partnering up. And I do want to kind of counter what you said. I want to partner up with a lot of the coffee shops here. We're actually through Reset, we're creating a coffee trail that I'm going to bring all the local coffee shops in. And people do think I'm crazy. They're like, why do you want to do business with our coffee shop?
I love that though.
And I'm like, well, I was like, okay, so if you love coffee, like I am a coffee lover. My husband is a coffee lover. Anything where we are, we're always looking for small local coffee shops because we want to go try them and sample them. And we look at it like an experience, right? So that's my target audience, is those people, not the people who are like, hey, I just need a cup, any cup of
Exactly.
Joe. My target audience for my coffee shop is the people that want the experience. They want to taste the tasting notes. They want to smell the aroma. They want to experience that type of coffee. That is my target audience. So if I know that's my target audience, I know that those people also want to try other coffee shops in the general area. So sometimes your competition is your competition, and on high level, whatever. But I like to flip it around, right? I am that person. I always could say creative marketing, right? I like to flip it and say, well, technically you're my competitor. However, what can we do to make this work for both of us, right? What can we do?
Yep.
Let's create something that's going to make it work for everybody. Sure, they can come and have coffee here. They can go have coffee there. They can, in our situation, they can collect the stamps. They can collect, we've created the app where it's kind of like Pokemon Go, where they can capture the whatever, so, I mean, it's becoming, it is a lot of fun. So the point of saying that is you can get creative, even if it is your competitor. You can get creative and at least try to reach out and say, hey, let's do something that makes this work for both people instead of arguing back and forth. What is that? McCoy and what's the other guy or other family's name?
Hatfield and McCoy's.
Yeah, don't do that. That makes no sense. Come on. Let's figure out some commonality. You all have the same problems and you all can help each other's solutions. I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, I believe strongly in finding ways to be able to bring value to whatever that opportunity is. So whether it's a partnership or, for example, and I'll share this as well. We work with a lot of larger brick world Lego type shows, and we've partnered with them to be able to craft what we call the Kid Build Challenge. We do that with Comic-Cons. We do that with our area festivals. We do that in a way that allows a value. So, for example, if you were a festival, a Comic-Con, or even a brick world, you have the ability to advertise, hey, you can go out there and you can actually have a similar experience like a Lego Master, like the TV show, like you can, and that's a great thing for the kids. So by us bringing that value to the event, festival, whatever, it allows us to add, and then we can say, okay, not only do we want to add that value, but now it's like, let's make this a win-win. Let us bring our shop into you. And now we have the ability to be able to sell to a client or a customer that would never travel to Gaylord to go to our downtown shop. And so we've actually worked out quite a few arrangements with people across the Midwest here where we actually travel to their location. We bring our product. We sell, just like you said, that boutique thing. That is a great idea. If you were in a boutique area, partner up with a coffee shop and have an actual live fashion show or whatever you want to call it. I mean, like, those are the kinds of things that you have to think differently about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and another thing is, you have to also think about what, even if it's not something you have now, and this can be kind of tricky, but hear me out. What is selling organically in your industry that you're not doing now? And why are you not doing it now? A good example, again, going back to the cafe, I just bought a food trailer. Yeah, bought a food trailer. And so people are like, wait, it's a recession. Why are you spending so much money? However, I'm literally leaving money on the table every week. Every week I'm getting 2 or 3 event pretty much begs of people coming for me to come and set up. And I've said no. They've tried to get me to do pop-up tents. That sound like a nightmare with an espresso machine and all the things. And finally, I'm like, okay, well, to be able to kind of get to the next level, to be able to help, and I hate the term recession-proof, but I'm going to say it anyway. These are things that people are coming to me now, and I'm saying no. People are coming to me, I'm saying no. So I decided, okay, well, I'm adding this up on rough estimate what I would have made, and I could have paid for the trailer so many times. So to me, I just had to go ahead and do it. Yes, I'm spending more money. Yes, I'm adding something else. But in this scenario, that's money on the table, right? That's money that I know is going to be there because people are organically asking all the time. So, that has to obviously be well thought out and well planned when you're thinking about adding something new. But look around, do some research, talk to people, and think back, even if you have to what were some things or what have been some things historically that people are like, hey, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? And is that something that would be a valid discussion piece at this point.
Yeah. So products, services, those are basically your two things that you sell all the time. Doesn't matter what business you're in, you're either selling a product or you're selling a service. And in some situations, you're doing both. You're selling both a product and a service.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking at that, what are additional products that you can add on that have really low cost? What are additional services? So if you are a cleaner and you're going into the home, what is something that you can add on to that cleaning service? So a couple of years ago, I've been coaching several different cleaning businesses. They're power washers, and they're always looking at how can I increase, because it's going to cost the same to send a crew to a house to power wash the house and then have them come back. What can you add to that service that would actually, so cleaning grills, that's another add-on. Cleaning out the dryer vent. People don't even think about having to clean out the dryer vent. Cleaning my dogs are going to bark here. Hang on.
That's all right.
I'm going live and it's like the dogs decide to bark all of a sudden.
They want to be known. They're like, hey, I'm here.
Be in it. Yeah. So adding on services are really, really important. Whether it's the grills, cleaning windows and doing the extra screens, or doing the outside of the house, cleaning the gutters. There's all kinds and sorts of things that you've got to be able to say, okay, what other aspects are needed? And man, you can really increase your average customer sale by adding on these extra things.
Absolutely. And I mean, most of the time your customer is going to be happy about it. If they don't have to find another person to do this and another person to do this, or waste their weekend doing it with equipment that doesn't do it as effectively. If you can answer some of these problems, don't be afraid to ask for that upsell, right? Don't be afraid to mention it, because most of the time they're going to be happy to hear that you do that. Even if they're not ready to take it on right then, they're going to be happy to know that you do that. Right. And all you have to do is mention it, right? And
dryer cleaning vents. I mean, nobody even thinks about cleaning out there. It's like, oh, by the way, for an extra $100, I can get your dryer vents all cleaned out. And they're like, well, why do I need it? Well, because it helps prevent fires. And there have been fires. And you can go back statistically and look at it. The one caution, and I will say this, because I've watched people jump into big, deep businesses, you have to count the cost. You have to look at it and say, okay, how much is it? What is my educational time to be able to do this service? What is it going to cost to be able to perform this service? Now, that's exactly what you were saying when you said you bought the food truck, right? You're looking at it and saying, okay, how much is it actually going to cost me to do that? How much is it going to cost to have a labor that's going to be an extra? How often are these events? You don't want to spend 10 grand on a food truck if you're only going to do one event and you're going to make $1,000. You're going backwards, right? So you have to look at the cost.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important, because I too have seen people try to do so many different things to try to quote unquote fix. And I'm not even seeing people. I've done it myself in the past. Let's be real here. To where it's like you have this big need, you feel the stress, and you're trying to jump and do too many way different things instead of looking at things that are different maybe, but similar, and just add on. Like you mentioned, I thought the power washing was a very good example. You're going to clean a driveway. Why not offer to clean a patio or a pool deck or a grill or a garage door or siding or whatever, right? Why not have these add-ons that you're able to give them a discount on what it would be if you was to bring out a whole crew, and mention it to say, hey, just to let you know, a lot of our cost is in setup and tear down, so we can offer you a deal if you schedule for the same day for
exactly.
And people are a lot more willing to do it like that. It's saving the money if they do it today, and it's making you more money on going to the exact same.
You've already got the cost of sending people out there. So that's reducing costs because you're adding on services. You don't have additional fees or trips or charges or anything else. Let me put it this way, because we're talking about perspective. We're talking about adaptability and the ability to look outside and above where you're at. The number one challenge, and this is what I see a lot of, is especially when you're considering what needs to be added on or what needs to be done, you have to think like your customer thinks. In other words, 9 times out of 10, you are not your own customer. The majority of the time, you will actually think and act and operate differently than what your customers do. And I found this to be true in T-shirts, especially because, and I'll just give a real quick example here. If a male, like between the ages of 35 and about 50, they believe that the Gildan 100% cotton is the best T-shirt ever, and they're the ones that they want. They're the guys that are going to wear them. They're like, that is the best. That's what they want. If I'm a female, 35 to 45, that is not the best T-shirt. They want like an LAT that's a mix. Obviously, you can tell I have a background in t-shirts, but basically they have it's a mix of poly with the cotton in it. And
I like the Bella canvas. That's
Bella canvas, or it has a little bit of rayon in it to get that soft, stretchy feel.
Yep.
Like all that
I
kind
don't like the Gildan. They're stiff and gross.
Yeah. But the point is you have to think like your customer, not like your own self. Like you just are not your own customer.
Yeah, I think thinking about what your customer is wanting and not necessarily always what you're wanting, which, I will say sometimes it depends. Sometimes you are your own customer. There's some, because I'm sitting here thinking with my wellness company specifically, my target customer is who I was then. Right.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case. So, I mean, I think it's great to think about, ask yourself, who is your customer, right?
Yes.
Who is your customer? Who is your customer? And, you may have obviously more than one type of customer. And that kind of goes into our discussion on ideal customers and all that. But
I feel like I need a pitch right now. It's like, who's your customer? Like we talked about that in one of our podcasts. But go back and listen because we actually talked about advertising.
We talked about that. Yeah. But a quick version of that is think of your best customer right now. Who are they, right? Your best customer. You make the most money from it. They're the easiest or the whatever. Who's your best customer? Start out thinking about them. You can add all the other things later, right? Think about them. What do they need? What do they want? How do they need it said? What's going to work for your best customer? That's a version of your ideal. Yep. And I think that a lot of ways to even talk about how to reduce costs and how to increase revenue boils back down to realizing who you're talking to, right? And I hate saying niching down, because I think there's good times to niche down, and I think there's terrible times to niche down, and I think there's great ways to niche down. I think there's terrible ways to niche down, and that's a whole other conversation for a whole other day. But one thing that I can say about that is, the high level version of that is what we were just saying. Think about the things that are organically working right now and do more of that, right? What's making you the most money right now? What's the things that, even though it's terrible out there, it's keeping the lights on right now? What are those things? Do more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sitting here writing down some of these things here too, because I mean, we're approaching 30 minutes and I knew this was going to probably go a little bit longer than our average podcast, but it's really, really important. So just kind of looking at what we have, look at the low hanging fruit, partner up by adding value, add your upsells, and then think like your customer. And then what you just said is, or what is organically working right now, and focus on those things. And those things right there, it's kind of a combination. It's not listed out like these will drive revenue, these will reduce cost. They kind of do both at the exact same time, because if you're focused on that, it gives you the ability to repurpose product that maybe was used previously, repurpose that and come up with ways to be able to drive some revenue that way.
I love it. I think that's a good place to stop. And I do think that we'll kind of follow this up, because this is obviously a very in-depth conversation. And again, it's not going away anytime soon.
No.
So I think we can really dig into this a little bit deeper. But I do love that takeaway list that you gave of some of the ways that you can start doing that today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will strongly, strongly encourage you, if nothing else, just think outside of your current focus and look at it from a different perspective. If you can do that, all of these things that we listed, there's a whole new look on that, and it literally will broaden your horizons to be able to help drive that revenue.
Absolutely. And if you need help doing that, I guess I can't volunteer, Jim, but I would be willing to chat with you. I'm sure.
I'll borrow my brain.
Yeah. So I started to say, and I'm like, well, maybe you can be like, no. I want to talk right now.
No, we got, I mean, like together we can really look at that. And we do have a program called Borrow My Brain, which we have specifically out there for this reason, to help change perspectives, because sometimes it's good to have another brain. You get stuck in your one way of thinking, your one way of doing things. You need that outside perspective, and you can borrow Maria or my brain.
My brain's a little scary, so but no, I love to use the example of, a typo, like, and I've said this so many times, but I think it makes so much sense, that, you type a paper and you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, it's great. And you give it to your friend and like, oh my gosh, you have a typo here. This makes no sense. And That is the benefit of reaching out to somebody who's kind of been there and done that. That's the benefit of talking to somebody. They can look at it from a different perspective. It's not that you're doing anything wrong per se. it is that maybe you have some typos, right? Maybe you're not seeing it because you're so close to it and you know what it should be, right? You know what it should say. So your brain's skipping right over that typo. But if you have somebody come from the outside and look in, in a very short amount of time, your friend looking at that paper say, oh, this is misspelled right here. And you've read it 30 times. You've never seen it.
Yep.
So, I think a lot of times we don't want to reach out and say, I'm struggling, I need help.
Yep.
But the truth of the matter is we all struggle, no matter how long we've been in business. We all need help, no matter how long we've been in business. We all have to have something we call and say, look at this. I don't know what to make of it anymore. I need some, outside eyes to look at it and find my typos. And that's okay. We're here.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we'll be back again next week with another episode. And I thank you all.
See ya.